Alright, welcome to our first video in the series looking at the process of generating our prototype. So actually implementing the code, getting our idea to come to life. So for this series of videos, I'm going to be using the Digital School Planner project, which we've looked at with some of the videos in the modeling series. And so I'll be using this class diagram to form the basis of my coded prototype. So you can see the attributes and the methods there for the key objects, so that being the user and the task, as well as an object which just combines the user and the task, so we can save a bit of data space, which if you haven't looked at Unit 2 yet, you might not quite understand the theory behind, but essentially we're just trying to eliminate as much double handling of our data as we can. So the first thing we need to do when we're creating a new project or a new prototype is set up a folder for our project. So I've already gone ahead and set one up. So in amongst all of my models that I've completed previously, I've set up a folder called source code, and this is where all of my files are going to sit. Alright, so if you haven't got one, obviously create a new folder, call it what you like, and then this is where our files are going to sit. So as I said, we're going to use this particular class diagram to form the basis of our code prototype. So in terms of the algorithms, which are contained within the methods, as well as the attributes acting as variables. So I'm just going to move this off to the side so I can refer to it throughout. And we're going to use Visual Studio Code for the actual text editor. So to create a new file in Visual Studio Code is pretty simple. File, new text file, or Control N on the keyboard. And then once we've created our new file, the first thing we should do is to save it. So within that source code section, source code folder. I'm going to call this one lib, so short for library.py. So this Python file is going to contain all of our objects in a library. So a library, just like a physical library, is a place where you can borrow materials from. Obviously, in this case, those materials that we're borrowing are our objects. So we'll call upon this in our main program, and also then we can take this library and apply it to different projects throughout our time. So when we're declaring an object in Python, we declare it as a class. So a class is a generic blueprint for an object. We're not creating specific users at this stage or adding in specific tasks to our system. We're just creating the outline of those particular objects. So create a class called user. We do need to add parentheses afterwards and a colon. So once we've declared our object with the object name, the first method we're going to add is actually a predefined method in Python called init. Just going to get rid of that extra piece we don't particularly need. So we use def to define any function or any method in Python. So the dunder or double underscore init method is a predetermined method in Python, which basically runs whenever we create an instance of our object. So when we create a user, it's going to run this initial method. And this initial method is going to be used for storing all of our attributes within this object. So for that particular user, all of its data is going to sit within this object, and the initialization is what will take that data in. Alright, so if you're using Visual Studio Code for the first time, you might notice this little white dot that appears, and when you hover over it is the close button. Essentially, that just means we haven't saved our work. So Control S is the shortcut on the keyboard. Make sure you're pressing Control S regularly as you work through your code. All right, so once we've got this initial setup, we do want to add in our attributes. So to do that, there's two steps. The first step is to include the attributes in our initialization, because we do need to pass these in as parameters. We've got username, password, name, type, and I believe that's it. I know I did have another attribute. That might be a little typo on the class diagram. All right, and so in our initialization function, all we want to do is declare the attributes and have them as variables that we can use within our system. So you might notice that along with the attributes that we're passing in, we also use the word self. All right, so this word self is purely a note to Python that this is how we're going to refer to the user object from here on out within the object. All right, so when we type in self dot username, or actually we'll call it user just so we can see the difference. What we're saying is for this instance of the object user, the actual user variable is going to be equal to the username that we pass in. Okay, so we're assigning the user attribute of this object to the username that's passed in. You can have self.username and refer to it as username going forward, but just to try and differentiate them so you can see where the connections are, I will try to come up with different variable names. So self.pwd for password is the password attribute. Full name is name. And I can't think of anything better for type, so we'll just go with self.type equals type. Again, Control S to save our progress. Okay, so once we've established our attributes, we want to also go and define our methods. So to do that, we just use def to define, and our actions, we want to be able to add a user. And again, I'm going to use that self keyword, so whenever we're referring to the user and its attributes, it will be referring to itself. And then we're going to use the keyword pass. You might have seen that a bit earlier when I created the init function. So pass is just a placeholder to say that this method currently has no actions, but that's okay. That's the way we want it. So we also want to view user self. And again, we're going to pass. So you'll start to see the pattern. So for each method we want to add, it's def, then the name of the method. So in this case, update user self. So that's how we're going to refer to this particular object or instance of object, and then pass. Delete is the other one. So for those of you that have, again, studied in Unit 2, you'll be aware that these four particular methods, so add, view, update, delete, or I guess you could replace add and view to say create user and read user, form what we call the CRUD algorithms. So in most of our applications that involve data, these four particular algorithms or four processes are the big four that you're going to deal with. So you'll notice as we go through the other objects that that pattern is going to continue. We do also have a login user method, and so this one will be a little bit different in actually verifying the user's login details. So we're not particularly doing anything with the user other than checking their data against the data that we have for them. All right, so again, once we've created the method save, we can save as you do each one. So we have basically created the structure for our code based on our class diagram. So for user, so I've started with the one on the right. Might have been a bit nicer starting with the one on the left, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so we'll do the same thing for the other two objects. And again, as we talk about when we're learning how to code, one of the big things is about getting in those reps. So as I said, because of the pattern, we could copy and paste quite a lot of this and use it again. However, we want to type all of it out so it gives us more time interacting with the particular code. So class task, connect. Again, we can get rid of this none piece. And we will add in all of the attributes. So we've got ID, title, subject, date, due date, instructions, type, and time. So quite a few here, but I guess again this is an opportunity to just practice. So self.id is ID, self.title, title, self.subject, subject. And so I guess some of you might be thinking as we're going through this, wouldn't it make more sense to pass in these attributes as a list? And it would make sense, but I suppose particularly for those of you that are learning how to put this together for the first time, it is also helpful to actually add them all in individually so you can make the connection somewhat easier. We've got 3 to go. So self.instruction. So perhaps in a future video when we talk about refactoring, that's something we could definitely look at, the idea of passing in a list and just iterating through that. But as I said, because this is for a lot of people the first time looking at this stuff, it's easier if we step it all out. All right, so we now have 8 attributes for our task. That seems to match up with our class diagram. So now it's just a matter of putting in our methods. So once again, we're adding a task, pass, viewing a task, adding task, deleting a task. And then we've got our final object, which is the combination of user and task. So there'll be situations where we want I guess, the same task to be applied to many users. So everyone getting the same assignment or the same homework task. Or conversely, obviously, we want each user to be able to access multiple tasks. So again, we want to define our initial function, self, and also we want the username and the task. So self.user, again, just try to keep it a bit shorter so we can. Self.task equals a task. And then the methods again are going to be very similar. So add user task, user task, update and delete. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've got our three objects. So going back to the top, user, we're just room in between, our task, and our user task. And for each of those objects, we've got an initialization method, which allows us to set the attribute for the instance that we're working with, and then using that to add, new, update, delete. So I forgot to put self in these methods, so we can go back and fix that. Again, it's easy when you're doing multiple at the same time because you can start to work out the patterns and automate that process of defining our objects. Okay, so now that we've got that, that's step one completed. Next video, we will look at setting up for our interface.